because it is 6 o'clock, we do have. We'll do a roll call.
Amber Wilson.
Dave Banner.
Kelly Tarabell.
Jamie Dickey.
Julie McKenzie.
Lauren Fearman.
Craig Leader.
Emma Vestola. Jeff Fishwick.
Should we just do the table, right? All right.
And
Oh, sorry, forgot you were back there.
David
With your cold. All right, approval of March 13th, 2024 regular meeting. Oh, sorry, skipped something. Approval of the agenda.
Make a motion.
On the agenda?
Yeah.
On the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to have a discussion about the process for the bond. Not the substance, that would be premature. But
Right.
I'd like to discuss what our procedure might be,
So is that something we can talk about under, I
wherever.
thought we had it on here somewhere.
We did not.
We did not.
We had discussed.
Oh, right,
Not
not
talking about
confusing
it
it,
until
right,
next
until. Do you feel comfortable putting it under like
I'm
board
sorry?
comments? Do you feel comfortable putting it under like board comments?
We're,
Okay.
okay. Good word
Yeah.
comments, yeah, sure.
Okay. Anything else added, additions or deletions? All right. Do we need a second?
Yeah.
Second.
Approval of the agenda?
I made the motion.
Yeah, Dave made the motion. I don't remember if anybody seconded. Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? I'm gonna forget you're back there, so
Yes.
speak up. Approval of minutes from March 13th, 2024, regular meeting.
There's two little typos that I. It's the date under section 4, approval of meeting. It's got an extra 10 there. And the policies first reads, there's an extra 2 in number 2. Oh.
Anybody else? Okay. Motion to approve the meeting minutes from March 13th,
So made.
second? Anybody want a second?
Anybody home?
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor of meeting minutes as corrected? Anybody opposed? Thank you. Communications, board comments.
I think we talked a little bit about the bond at our last meeting, and I think we all agreed it would be premature to move ahead with it until we get the base budget approved. But I think it might not be premature to ask Eric and Todd to start looking at what was in there and identify the most vital, and be ready to come to us probably at the May meeting with recommendations for with one or more options at a somewhat reduced level. And I don't know if that needs to be a motion or if that can just be a.
I'm looking at Cheryl, but I know. Sorry, Todd, go ahead.
So, and although this is a board decision, I think we would be better off to have a recommendation from the board on which direction, and we could come back to you with multiple angles of which way to go with a bond process, and then it's still got to be approved by the board. I think we'd be better off to meet as a committee first and discuss which direction you want to go with that, instead of putting that in mine and Eric's hands to come back to the board with what you want to do. Everything we've done with the bond with LMH has been through the facilities committee. So I think we'd be better off to meet that facilities committee meet and see which direction you want to go and then present that to the board as a group. That's just my opinion.
I don't think I'm gonna be ready to have a meaningful discussion about the bond until we have a passed budget. So I think we need to wait to see how that all plays out before we talk about the capital projects.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Concur with Julie.
I mean, just maybe we could ask that at the May meeting to be ready to provide us background if we want to ask questions like how much might it cost to do this, this, and this, right? And how much could we save if we don't do this and this? Again, and maybe coming to and giving your opinions at our board meeting. You know, you're the ones who know the buildings better than we do, right?
Well, if we know what needs to be done, that's like top and important. Can we go ourselves and get some quotes and itemized lists and see what we're looking at away from them? I don't,
They already did all the work. They already, that's what we.
but I don't see, I guess my problem is we can't even pass a regular budget. How are we gonna?
Well, I think that would be a
Get the
conversation.
time to
I mean,
pass
correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at Cheryl and Lauren, but correct me if I'm wrong. We would need to go through that process anyways. We're just using these people as our like general contractor. And it seems to me like we would need to have a budget first. We know we're gonna need to replace the boiler, and if that's not in the capital project, then we'll go out to bid for that separately, right? And then that would be different, and I think I agree that we should get the budget before we really move forward with anything with the bond, in my opinion.
There was an itemized breakdown of the cost in the presentations that we did for the community. So if to the extent that you want to see like what how each item contributed to the total, you can look in the presentations from EEI.
Any other board comments?
Okay, so then I'll go ahead and schedule a facilities committee meeting. Is that right?
Well, we have to get a facility committee going first, because it's all,
Oh, right.
we have a new board.
We have a new.
Right, so we have to do that first, and then we can, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. All right.
When do we think we're gonna put this up for budget again?
We have that coming up shortly. We'll talk about it.
Because I don't think the bond issue should be, as we learned the hard way, should be really close to a budget passing at all.
Other board comments? Public comment?
Okay. So, what, Otis Skelton?
Thank you.
So, we're not sure that if we're gonna go for the bond again, is that what I'm hearing?
No, I
We're
think,
gonna do a revote
I
on the
think
bond? too?
I think we'll have to have a bigger discussion, but right now our focus needs to be on a budget.
Okay.
Is what we're saying.
I didn't realize that there was gonna be a revote on the bond eventually too. So.
The board hasn't
Remains-
We haven't
That's the
decided
first I've
that,
heard
so-
of it.
right, that's the
Remains
first
to be
time
seen.
we haven't had a discussion about it yet, yeah.
That's all.
Other public comment? Superintendent report.
Okay, most of what we're going to talk about tonight is coming up in items on the agenda. So, the budget and other things, we'll talk about that a little later. I have a couple of things to share with you. Governor Scott announced the appointment of Zoe Saunders as the next Vermont Secretary of Education. She has a bachelor's from Harvard, a master's of ed from Vanderbilt, has worked as a fundraiser for healthcare organizations, then for a national charter school network, and as chief education officer in Florida. You can find information about her on the VSBA, the Vermont School Board Association website, including her resume. Members of the VSBA, the Vermont Superintendents Association, Vermont Principals Association, had all put forwards their survey responses and what they hope for in a new Secretary of Education. They were hoping for somebody with significant public school experience, which which Zoe Saunders does not appear to have. However, she's got a great deal of experience. It still needs to be, her appointment needs to be approved by the Senate, and that will hold a confirmation vote. The VSBA has put up on their website suggestions for ways that people can contact their senators if they are interested in providing any feedback about this particular selection. So I would encourage all of you, who are members of the Vermont School Board Association, as school board members, that you might like to go and look at the resume and give some feedback around that. We've been a year without someone, and it's good to have somebody appointed. But there are mixed feelings from a number of stakeholder groups. Also, last week, the House Ways and Means Committee and the House Education Committee held a joint hearing focused on the increase in education spending statewide. There were updates from the Joint Fiscal Office on Education Fund Outlook and the Agency of Education on Education Fund projections. The committee held a discussion on two questions. What is the problem we're trying to solve, and what tools do we have to solve the problem? You can view the videos of those joint hearings on again, there are links for that on the Vermont School Board Association. At the conclusion of the meeting, the chair, Kornheiser, stated that the committees are setting up a time for other members of the legislature to provide definitions of the education spending problem and possible solutions. And there will be opportunities for further input from the communities and from the field. Again, you can find information about all of that on the Vermont School Board Association, not just school board members, but other people can find it there as well. Then finally, we have a couple of VSBA webinars that are coming up. One about school construction that will be on April 11th from noon until 1. Lots of, as said previously, there's lots of conversation among the House and the Senate around school construction task force, and the VSBA is running this hour-long noon to 1 webinar to give board members information about that. You can register online for it. There are also a couple of meetings for new board members. We don't have anybody who's brand new, but people who are relatively new. They are running a new board member forum on April 16th at 7 p.m. and a new board member academy that will be meeting twice on May 6th and May 15th. If you have any interest in that, again, you can go to the Vermont School Board Association. And then finally, as I said in the last group of meetings, on April 8th, there'll be a total solar eclipse. School won't be in session, but people will be interested in it. And they're predicting a great many people coming to the state because Montpelier, Burlington are within the path of totality. Even though we're a little south of that, it will still be fairly dramatic. And every weekday evening at 4:48 p.m., Eye on the Night Sky with astronomy expert Mark Green from the Fairbanks Museum and Planetarium speaks on Vermont Public about astronomy. And you can visit his page and find links on the Vermont Public website. That's it. Thank you.
Any questions for Lauren? Principal's report, right?
Yeah.
I usually do it the other way. I do whoever's a guest, but whatever, I don't care.
Oh.
It doesn't matter, you know.
Well, who do you want to go first?
I don't care.
All right. So March was a busy month. We had an assembly with the VSO. The assembly was called The Force of Music, Brass, and the Physical Sciences. And kids had a great time, and they were here for about an hour and traveled from school to school to school. Student-led conferences were also in March, and while the 14th was the day that was scheduled for conferences, our teachers here at Ludlow offered times throughout the week to accommodate family schedules. On the 21st, we held a school choice fair in the gym. We had about 12 schools participate, about 25 different families attend from both Ludlow and Mount Holly. We did ask families for feedback, got some great feedback and suggestions, one of which was to hold the school choice event in the fall rather than the spring, and then to also have information around transportation available for families to help them make those decisions and choices for middle school and high school. Craig and I had the conversation of rotating from doing it alternate years in Ludlow and Mount Holly. So I will share all the information of all the schools who participated with Craig so he can schedule that for the fall. And I use the list that Cheryl had given me of where we pay tuition and ask families to also provide information on schools they might want to see at the school fair, school choice fair. And so I will also pass that survey information on to Craig, and we can work collectively to put that together. We are just finishing up the state assessment of the VT CAP assessment, Cognia. The administration went much more smoothly this year than it did last year. We're just about done. We've had a couple of small situations in which students may not have submitted and they thought they were done and we just had to log back in and then hit submit. So we're almost finished with that. Kristen Basie, the school nurse, works with EP SDT. Can't tell you what that acronym is. I remembered it, but it is health related, but Ludlow and Mount Holly has approximately $10,000 to do some playground upgrades. So Craig and I will connect on how we might want to spend that money on our playgrounds. At our faculty meeting today, Kathy from Invest EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, came and presented to our staff about what EAP offers members, and it's one of the most underutilized benefits that we have as a school. And they offer short-term counseling, legal and financial resources, and referrals. And they have posters that they provided for us, and we have that information available for our staff. Coming up in April, towards the end of April, Ludlow-Mount Holly PTG are hosting a spring event on April 26th. That information is posted on the Facebook pages. And the event will be held at the community center. And then the Rotary will be having their penny sale here on the 27th. And that's all I have.
Love sale.
Now it's your turn.
Okay.
Unless there's questions for Deb, sorry.
So I think it's kind of a sign of how well and in sync Deb and I are working together. My personal report is almost identical, so I won't belabor the points. We loved the VSO concert. I think one thing that we're both doing that you might not have missed, maybe I missed it, but our fifth graders are doing Starbase, which is great. We had to kind of have a hiatus during the COVID times, and so getting a lot of good feedback about that. Some of our students who are considering Mill River were invited to a student panel of Mill River students over at Shrewsbury Mountain School, so they did that last week. That gave you the rundown on the school choice fair, and we're hosting it next fall. PTG events. We're also just about done VTCAP testing. We've got, I think, 3. Maybe. So we should be done. Probably the final student that might happen until after break. Sorry. Student-led conferences were really well attended, and looking forward to collaborating on the ESET money for
Any questions for Craig? Thank you. Curriculum report.
because of the change in the meeting that got moved up a month, as you know, we reviewed the SIP at the LMH SIP at March meeting with board. And we had determined that to be able to share it with you in adequate amount of time and have the principals input their change, evidence-based change ideas, that we would share it with you prior to the May meeting. So if there's any questions you have based on the slides that we have in the folder that's linked on the agenda, please let the principals or Julie and I know so we can amend those, because as you know, in May, that will be shared and then approved, hopefully, by the board.
Thank you. Facilities director.
Okay, good evening. Got just a couple of things. We attended, Miss Leith, the assistant principal at Green-Mount, and I attended a crisis management seminar, sponsored by FEMA. Facilitator was ex-military, some schools and some other, firemen, police attended. And we brought that back and reported it back to the administrators meeting that Lauren holds, which, and I'm saying this because Deb and Craig were there. We found it people were very attentive, and I was pleasantly surprised that our SOPs and our EOPs are being well managed. I had a conversation with Deb and Craig, and I mean, there's always things we can do with our emergency operating procedures because it could be filled with what ifs, and there's always what ifs. So it was great to speak with everybody and a lot of good questions, and I think some good things came of that. The rest of my time, we've been talking more and more about PFAS at Mount Holly. There were more questions at the last meeting, and there's been some significant movement on that. And instead of me trying to explain it, we've worked with Craig, and Craig Jewett, and he changed architecture firms, engineering firms, and he is now contracted with Otter Creek Engineering to help us through this process. So I asked him to come and give us a full update on what is happening because there's been significant movement on that. So I'm going to turn it over to Craig. Thanks for coming, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So kind of give everybody an update. The funding program has reached out and is in the process of finalizing the funding associated with the construction loan and the associated loan to pay for the engineering services during construction. We have a meeting scheduled with the funding program on Friday to hopefully agree to, in concrete terms, continuing with Belden, who is under contract with the original contract for the project. There's some nuance to that and some jumping through hoops because we have multiple funding programs now. So the hope is that meeting will get everybody on the same page and that the funding programs will agree with the approach of amending Belden's current contract and moving forward with the remaining parts of the construction that needs to be done. In talking with Belden, they're very concerned that the summer is a realistic goal at this point. They are looking at the fall. So that is an update related to schedule of that. There is a slight chance that the funding programs can't get on board with what we're doing, and that we may be required to rebid that. I think that's a fairly limited chance of happening, but it's not zero. So that is something that's going to be discussed. And if we can't come to a resolution related to that, that may happen in order to keep your funding. So that may be the hoop we have to jump through in order to secure the funding and make sure the people who are paying for this are ultimately happy with what we're doing out there. So that meeting will occur on Friday, and we will report out to Todd related to what comes out of that meeting. Hopefully it's an understanding of what the change order for Breadloaf is going to be, and then we can begin in earnest with negotiations of that change order with Belden. That is the preferred path to go. We could rebid the project. The fear that I have is that that is further going to delay when this actually gets constructed. And contractors are really busy this summer to the point where we've had multiple projects that I'm aware of that received no bids, multi-million-dollar construction projects that contractors, no bids were submitted. So that is why we're recommending to stay with Belden. They're a local contractor. They're familiar with the project, and they're willing to move forward with us in this way so long as the funding is secured, which is obviously the biggest thing.
Thanks for staying with us during this mess.
Well, and this mess, I've been involved from the beginning of this so-called mess, so I do feel some obligation related to that. And regardless of how this goes, whether we stay with Belden and move forward under that, or we do end up having to rebid this, I am dedicated to kind of seeing you guys and helping you guys through this. I do take some ownership with this. So Otter Creek and I have negotiated how that would work if Otter Creek stays involved, which hopefully is the preferred route. And if for some reason they don't, and we have to rebid the project, then Otter Creek would likely go away, and MSK would take over with rebidding the project and then the construction of the project. So that's the update. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions, and then there'll be some subsequent reporting out on Friday after our meeting with the funding programs.
Thank you, Julie.
Hi, you mentioned that the start time may be delayed till the fall. Do you expect that would have an impact on the operations in the school?
It will certainly make the construction a little bit more complicated as far as how the switchover goes, but actually the fact that the school's not actually drinking the water makes it somewhat easier than it would be under normal circumstances. Normally we'd be trying to keep the school in water while we're switching this stuff over. That's a little bit easier in this situation because we're not necessarily relying on as much of it. We also have the option to keep the well and the current water system active as long as we can. So we can actually come pretty close to having both operating at the same time and then do a switchover. So I think it will have limited operational effect on the school. And obviously that would be something we'd have to discuss, and that would be part of the negotiation with Belden along with the change order and the new schedule for the project.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Greg? Thank you. Very
Thank you.
much.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Any
So
questions?
that's all I have, unless anybody's got any questions.
Questions for Todd? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Financial update.
All right.
You're gonna move your lips, you're gonna talk.
It's just my magic. But what Carol has to tell you. The March 2024 financials. We've currently spent 66.22% of the budget. 3 months left to go in the fiscal year, so we're right where we belong. Mount Holly maintenance is over budget by $6,720. The majority of that is repairs for the boiler. And the quarterly report for reserve accounts and special funds is in your folder. The rest of what you'll get for financials, we don't move from the budget.
Any questions for Cheryl via Lauren? No? Okay. And old business, our FY25 budget.
Right. So at our March 13th meeting, we presented a revised budget proposal that the board heard and made adjustments to. I'm going to share with you what is in the folder that is available for everybody on the TRSU website. So that we can look at that. Before we go through that, though, just want to remind everybody where we were. We had suggested a number of changes that included reductions to some personnel. This board voted to put all of the personnel back in. So the budget that is being presented to the board tonight is for $8,907,773. That is a increase of 139,661 over what we presented on March 13th to you. So what you put back in was $139,661. We've cut from the budget, that has stayed cut from the budget that went forward to the voters, is we reduced 2 building subs that were not being filled for either Ludlow or Mount Holly. We reduced some money in capital improvement. We had a reduction through the TRSU assessment and some miscellaneous benefit adjustments as well. So overall, since March 5th, we went from an increase that had been at 19.12% to an increase of 16.17%. That is a decrease of 2.95%. So we've had a reduction since March 5th of just under 3%, 2.95. That is a total decrease of $226,747 for that final budget number of $8,907,773. So just to show everybody what is in our folder for what that means. Pull that up again here. And that is this piece. I get some things out of my way on the screen. That these are our overall numbers. Our cost per pupil, it will be $12,934.37. We have a decrease even when we do the change with the funding formula. The yield is at 9,785. That's projected. That's what we're working with at the moment. You won't know what that is finally until we get to June. The important number for your taxes, though, is the base tax rate. Last year, it was 1.43. Under this new budget, it is going to be 1.32. That is a reduction of 7.85%. And that is what influences how much your taxes are affected by the local education budget. Your taxes are affected to a greater degree by the CLA, which again is not within the control of your local education budget. That's going up. It is going up for the projected CLA for Ludlow is at 77.73. Is that accurate, Carol? And for Mount Holly, 77.01. When we go down and we look at what that means for your actual taxes, this number that we're doing for math, we know nobody has a $100,000 home. But for math purposes, the annual increase in your taxes for every $100,000 worth of home you have, because of the CLA, you're having a $138.50 for every $100,000 of home increase for Ludlow. Because of our base tax rate decrease, that will go down to $60. For Mount Holly, it will be $178.50. However, we are having a reduction from your local base tax rate, so it will be $100. And again, I know most people who are here in the room have heard us talk about how I understand how difficult it is to hear that we're spending 16% more than we spent last year, and your base tax rate is reduced. That is because of the change in the funding formula from the state of Vermont for this 1 year only. We are a district that is benefited by having the change in weights for students, the increase based on families that live in poverty or families that live in rural area. And the end result of that is that we are given credit for state funding for having significantly more students this year than we had last year.
Almost double.
Almost double. And as a result of that, we can spend more money and have the same base tax rate. As it is, we are not spending as much money as we could and have the same base tax rate. That was the budget we gave you in March. This budget is still an increase, but it is a reduction in your base tax rate from last year. All right.
I think equalized pupil went 300 and change over 600 and change, right?
We were at 328 last year under the new funding formula. We have 642, which means we get more money to spend from the state. This change isn't going to happen again next year. Next year, we will be at the same base tax rate. And if we continue to spend more than we are spending this year, your base tax rate will go up. This is the year where you can spend more and not raise your base tax rate.
Or can I ask you a clarifying
You
question?
can.
The March budget reflected a, how much percent?
19.12.
19.12 increase. That was March 5th. And this is a 16.17. Which is a 2.95% decrease from what we put forward March 5th and what we put forwards now.
Can you go through again what makes up the cuts? The 226,000?
Yes. Let's see. That is, there's other things in this. So we did a reduction of 2 FTEs for building subs. We reduced the amount in our capital improvement. We had a roughly $77,000 reduction for the assessment from the TRSU. And then there are some miscellaneous benefit adjustments because of changes that were made at the state, mostly around unemployment rates.
Is that it?
That is it. We had a couple of things where we now know who we're hiring for some positions. So there are some small increases in salary, decreases in salary, increases for benefits, decreases that essentially, without changing the positions, wind up altering things for a couple $100. Those are the building subs, the reduction. How much did we pull back out of capital improvement, Cheryl? 65,000 out of capital improvements. The TRSU assessments, benefit adjustments.
Okay. The the reduction of the 2 FTEs, the subs, my memory is that there weren't actual people in those
No, they're
positions.
not.
They're vacant. Okay.
These were positions that we put in to all of our buildings with ESSER funds because we were struggling to have enough substitutes. It's a good idea to have that and to have the consistency. And if you do a building sub, their salary rate is the same as a day-to-day sub, but because they know they're going to be employed every day, they also get benefits. So sometimes you can find people who are willing to take the job.
Got it.
Out of our 5 TRSU buildings, 2 of our buildings were able, pretty much from that first year, to find people who wanted those jobs and have consistently stayed in them. This year, we need to move that expense out of ESSER funds into the general budget. But in 3 of our buildings, we have sporadically had people to fill it. We've been unable to fill it consistently. And while the idea of having it there is nice, when we're looking at whether we have to cut things, I'd rather cut something that we're unable to fill right now than cut things that we actually have in place.
And what had you earmarked the 65,000 in from the capital improvement for?
I don't think we had anything specific. Yeah. Oh, right, so we had a number.
You had gone out for another bid.
We had a general number about what we thought it might cost to replace the heating system at Mount Holly, and we did a little more research and came back with some lowered numbers, so we're able to say that we figured we were comfortable with cutting 65,000. We might be able to take a little more, but that felt like a safe place.
Okay.
That includes removing the oil tank.
Yes, it includes doing all of the things that we know will need to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Because areas.
Other questions about the budget? Thoughts?
Question?
Yeah.
I know at our last meeting, we agreed to restore all the positions. And I'd like to hear a little more about why members wanted to restore the third and fourth grade. You have separate third and fourth grade sections in Mount Holly. When, as I understood from Lauren, we'd have 21 kids in those two grades. So we have a section of 10 and a section of 11, if nothing changes. And to me, a section of 10 is pretty small. And to me, it's a little hard to justify either educationally or financially. And I would also say that if we were to combine those, we would then have an empty classroom that could be used, at least in the short term, for the occupational therapy, speech therapy, and maybe with a divider for a nurse's office. And from looking at the numbers, it appeared, and Lauren, tell me if I'm wrong, that we'd have, you never know who's going to come into the district and who's going to leave, but if nothing changes, we'd have a group of 21 in either third and fourth or fifth and sixth grade, at least for the next 3 years. And so it probably would not be just a 1 year change. But I understand other people wanted to keep the two separate sections. And I before I vote for the budget, I'd like to hear why, what the justification, what the reasons for doing that are.
Anybody that was at the meeting want to add to or answer Dave's? It was a discussion we had. I know you were on Zoom, so you probably didn't hear everything.
I missed some of it, but
right.
Is 10, do people think that, I know we're going to discuss the class size policy later, but do people think that 10 is a good class size to be aiming for?
I think it's a little small, but I think if they're two separate grades, then I think it's a good idea to keep them separate.
But we're going to combine the grades anyway.
Right, but if we're not, if we have the option of changing that, then why not? I didn't bring that up at the last meeting. I was more concerned about, the actual budget and the bond and not the class. That was a different topic. But I do think that if we have the ability of changing it back to not doing it combined, to not combine it. Because it is two separate grade levels and separate ages.
Didn't we discuss that already? This is what we agreed on before, so
Yeah, I
instead
think
of
we
changing
did,
horses in
did already
midstream.
agree on it though, and it was already kind of set, right?
Yeah, and it's something for discussion later on if we want to change that policy, but not in the middle of the game.
Right.
It was, so, because this happened before I came on, but correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that between 13 and 18, I would much rather have a little bit of a smaller class than a class that's too big. That's where I would start from. That way you could at least, if people move in, then we have room to put them into other classrooms as opposed to having a giant classroom of 23 or 24. Because I know some schools do that and other places do that, but that's not how we agreed to do it here.
If I could, our policy, procedure, not really policy, after this was a discussion I've got it though, for when we're talking about it later, I think in 22, but maybe it was in 23, that the board voted to move forwards with a practice of, if our class sizes were, when a teacher resigned or retired, if our class sizes were not all in between 13 and 18, we'd actually said 15 to 20 for the larger, for the upper grades, but between 13 and 18, we would not automatically hire another teacher. We didn't say we wouldn't ever hire another teacher. We said if we wouldn't do it automatically, that there would be a discussion. So in this case, what I heard from board members was that we're looking at whatever we do, we are either going to have more than 18 or under 13. And you're making a choice. Are you going to have for this year, you're going to have slightly higher than your target number or slightly lower? And the consensus from this board was that they would prefer to have us be slightly lower than slightly higher, which is a perfectly reasonable thing. That the procedure was an attempt to, over a 3-year period is what we proposed, to right-size our classrooms to be between 13 and 18 by not rehiring when a teacher voluntarily leaves. And 3 years later, this board was going to talk about it again to decide whether they wanted to continue with that procedure or change it to be we're going to be definitively not hiring or looking at doing a reduction in force. There was consensus, nobody wants to do a reduction in force. We don't want to tell people that they don't have a job until they're ready to leave. But when someone is leaving, rather than hiring, so that we perpetuate tiny classes, that was the rationale. We're either going to have more or we're going to have less. We'd rather have less.
Can I ask a question, just so I can sort of wrap my head around? Hey, Deb,
Yes.
in our 5th and 6th grade classes, what's the overall number
For next year,
for this year?
21.
So in our 5th and 6th grade together, we have 21.
Correct.
So in each classroom, we have,
So we wound up combining them. We had fewer students show than we had anticipated. So we had thought that the group would be 25, and it turned out to be 21. And with different things that happen throughout the year, we combined the classes with the 2 teachers currently working with both grade levels.
so with one teacher, how many are there? 10?
10 or 11.
10 and 11. So this is exactly the situation we're looking at for Mount Holly, for that group. Now, knowing some of those students, a lot of them had special needs. There's a lot of adults in those classes because of services that have to be provided.
Right.
Now, if you put those kids together in one grade, I think that would have been.
They are together.
They are together now.
But-
And
So there's one teacher,
No.
so
doing
there's
21?
2 teachers right now with the 21, along with the supports, and they're collaboratively teaching at 5 and 6. They're separated out from math instruction. All of our other classrooms, our 1st and 2nd grade is currently 20. Our 3rd and 4th is currently 20 or 21. So those are our numbers. Next year, the 1-2 will be about 20, 21, 20 to 21, and 3-4, and combined 5-6 will be 15.
And grade 1-2 has one teacher.
One
Grade
teacher
3-4
has one teacher. Grade 5-6 next year will have one teacher.
So it looks like we need more teachers.
If you decide that you don't want to have your classes at the sizes that this board decided they wanted.
Right.
And that's up to you.
Just because I need to be clear, because I need to see things sometimes. The classes, generally speaking, Ludlow and Mount Holly, are all reasonably around 20. Sometimes they're combined and sometimes they're not. And when they're doubled, they're at about 20 and we have 2 teachers.
Yeah.
No,
This was an
that's what I
anomaly
didn't
this
think,
year.
and then I just heard that, sorry.
This was an anomaly this year based on circumstances that I can't discuss publicly.
Right.
There was a decision made to combine them into a single class this year.
The fifth and sixth grade at Ludlow started with an expectation of 25 or 26 students in it. And because there were going to be 25 or 26 students in it, last year, when someone was leaving, we made the decision, even though not all of the classes throughout our two buildings were between 13 and 18, to hire another teacher. Because that class, if it had only a single teacher, would have had 25 or 26 students in it. And people have left, and now it is a class of 21. If it had been a class of 20 or 21, we might not have decided at that point to have hired another teacher. We're going to have some detailed discussion around this topic, and I have some things to show you, but we're talking about the budget, and I would like not to lose sight of that.
I mean, I still think it's safer to have a smaller class size than.
I'm glad to talk about why the board decided not to do that when we are talking about it.
Go ahead, Dan.
This is not an exact science. The fact that it's not an exact science, and there are things that come up in different classrooms with different kids as far as their needs are concerned, may require a variation of what even we don't want it to do. You can't say it has to be lockstep just because and have kids in there that require even more. So you got to have some play on this.
An implementation of the big picture that this board decides is the administration's call. So if this board decides that we are going to shoot for these particular class sizes, then you leave how we do that in the hands of the administration. If this board decides that they're happy with class sizes of 10, then you leave that in our hands and we'll do that.
I don't feel as though I have the expertise in education. I mean, I'm not a professional educator, and so I very much rely on what the experts in the room say is sort of educationally appropriate based on the data and the population in our classrooms. So I don't think that that's something I can really render an opinion about, what is appropriate 2 or 1, 20 or 10. What is, so I'm happy for you all to tell me this. Everyone is, you all are expert in that area. What I was persuaded by the last time was the feedback from employees in the room, or employees in the buildings who talked about, as Jamie mentioned, the needs of some of the students in the classroom and how the bigger you get, the more kind of unwieldy the room becomes. But I also, to me, there seems like a basic argument of just stability of the building, to not constantly be shuffling your staff to teach different grades from year to year. That if we feel like a cohort of 10 or 11 is like within the range of what we do, then to me, it seems like for sort of stability of the programming and the staffing, to maintain that headcount until we hear from you all that you would like to do it a different way. I don't think I'm expert enough in sort of, the educational approaches to be able to say whether it's better 1 or 2. So I support the original budget was for 2 rooms at that grade. So I support that for this revised budget too.
Any other questions, comments, or thoughts about budget? Do we want to make a motion?
No.
And I'm sorry, I got rid of
probably gonna need a number.
Yeah, I was just getting back there, hang on.
Budget for 8,907,773, is that correct?
8907,773.
8,907,773.
Okay. So Dave makes the motion. Anybody second it?
Second.
Thank you. Any more discussion on Dave's motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. So now we need to do the warning for the budget vote.
So our question for you is when you want to schedule that vote. Cheryl and I, along with some of our administrators, have had a discussion about it. We can do that anytime after 7 days from this date, when you are setting, you have now approved a number. Our recommendation is that we schedule the vote for Tuesday, April 23rd, which is 3 weeks from now. That is a sufficient window for our town clerk's offices to pull things together. I would recommend doing it on a Tuesday, even though people aren't used to having votes in April and May. We're used to going on a Tuesday. So I think that is a good plan. If that feels too early, I would still be comfortable with April 30th. I wouldn't go any later than that. I know we want to be able to get the message out, but people, if you go too far out, that sense of urgency around it starts to dissipate. And we're very hopeful that this will pass. We do also want enough room, if it doesn't, to be able to put one more forwards before we get to July 1st. If you want to do it on April 23rd, we have a written warning here prepared that we would read through, that you would then approve and sign. And blissfully, you are all here in the room and able to do that, so we don't have to try to use the wonders of modern technology to have merge what people are doing in person with what we could do online. And then we would schedule the informational meeting for that, which we're required to have for Ludlow-Mount Holly would happen, as it always does, so Tuesday before the vote. So that would be on Tuesday, April 16th. We would schedule an informational meeting that would happen here and could also, people could gather in Mount Holly and Zoom in, so you're all getting the same information, but you can only schedule it warn it in a single official location. That we would do that informational meeting on that day.
Can you tell me why it is that we do it a week before? In years past,
Yep.
in Mount Holly, we used to do the informational meeting in conjunction with town meeting the
Yeah.
night before the vote.
Well, you have to do it within it's no fewer than 5 days, and I believe no more than 7. I do not know why Mount Holly and Ludlow decided to make a change from doing it with town meeting.
I can tell you why. It was because when we closed Black River, it made it so that the group of people that was at the first annual meeting said that they wanted to have it so that the towns could have one meeting so that we would all hear the same information. And because our towns have 2 separate town meetings, we can't have an informational night in 2 places at once. And so those were in the articles of agreement that we made when we did all of that work back in
Doesn't
2018,
necessarily
19.
worry, right? For this vote.
Well, we're not doing a town meeting at all.
I know.
Right. So we would still do it a week ahead. I mean, I suppose we could do it the night before, but.
Well, no, it has to be no less than 5 days.
Okay, so we
Oh, okay,
can't.
so that's.
There's another reason, yes, yeah.
So it can't be the night before.
I think
Oh, everyone's just tired.
closer to the vote, the better.
You could set it closer if you wanted. I would not recommend doing Friday.
No,
Um,
I'm all right.
And because we have done at Ludlow-Mount Holly for the last 6 years, the informational meeting has happened the Tuesday before the vote. It feels appropriate to me to continue to do that.
So the info meeting on the 16th. The vote on the 23rd is what we're looking for. Are there other thoughts?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
We usually read this, yes?
I expect that.
So I will read this, then, that this is officially what you're motioning to do. It is the warning for the Ludlow-Mount Holly Unified Union School District, voting by Australian ballot, Ludlow Town Hall and Mount Holly Town Office, Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. The legal voters of Ludlow-Mount Holly Unified Union School District, consisting of the towns of Ludlow Town and Mount Holly, are hereby warned to meet at the respective polling places on Tuesday, the 23rd day of April, for the purpose of voting by Australian ballot. The business to be transacted to include Article 1. Shall the voters of Ludlow-Mount Holly Unified Union School District approve the school board of directors to expend $8,907,773, which is the amount the school board of directors has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that the proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $12,934.37 per long-term weighted equalized pupil.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Why is the voting open at 10? It would be great if it could be open when your parents drop their kids off at school.
That is something to take up with your
Town.
town.
Mhm.
It's a good question.
A lot of people probably can't vote.
And Mount Holly's right near the
School.
town hall. Yeah.
Absentee ballots, we have that in Ludlow.
Oh, okay.
That's good.
I mean, I agree. Places, it is very nice. I was in Chester, I would love to be able to
Yeah.
go and vote before I come into.
Yeah.
The reason is that it has to be at a minimum between, it has to start at no later than 10 o'clock. And I believe finish no earlier than 7. And it's a town decision about that. So this is what they are prepared to do at this point.
And then when would the absentee ballots be ready?
On this, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Is it all the voting that they do from 10 o'clock in Ludlow, or is it just for the school? Or do they all?
For when,
For the time for 10
on the
o'clock.
the 23rd, the only thing anybody's voting on is this. When the vote happens, in March, on the first Tuesday of the month, it is also from 10 o'clock in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. That is the time frame for all of the towns within the TRSU. I think for most towns around the state, although I'm sure there are some that may open earlier and stay open. But that's a conversation with your select boards.
Probably has something to do with milking cows early in the morning.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the warning. Is,
Who
sorry,
made the motion?
Dave did.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I captured that appropriately. Thank you.
And did you get that Jamie seconded it?
Didn't.
All right, perfect. Any other discussion about the warning for the budget revote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Beautiful. All right, so we will sign away.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
To sign, so don't let me forget.
Okay.
All right, next on the agenda is board assignments. So if we look down under our Sorry. Oh, yeah, and Dave's back there. If we look under the bottom, toward the bottom of our agenda, we have our little chart that has our current committees and who is currently serving on them. And at this moment, we don't have other people to fill the 2 vacant positions, but we might obviously have need for some of these policy or, sorry, not policies, committees. And therefore we should fill them and then make adjustments as appropriate if we get new board members. So the first one, it looks like Dave and I are currently on the facilities committee. I hear Dave still wants to do
I'd be happy to
that.
stay on it.
I'm happy to do that. Unless there's somebody else who wants to do it, and then we still need yet one more person.
That was, when we met at the school. I think I had gone to a few of those. I'd like
Yeah.
to be involved with that. Okay. A little bit more.
Sure. So we'll add Maria to the facilities committee. Anybody else? I'll jump ship if anybody wants to volunteer. No? Okay.
And of course, I mean, like all meetings, they're open meetings.
Right.
So if somebody wants to come, and you're not prohibited just because you're not on the committee.
Policy committee meets to review policies. And
I went to the last one.
Jamie is currently on the policy committee.
We were glad you were there. We usually have 2 reps from Green Mountain and 2 from Ludlow-Mount, making those decisions about what goes forward to the boards.
Also would like to join Jamie at the policy meetings. Do you want to go until we get somebody else? Anybody?
I can go until we get
Okay. All right. So we'll add Maria to the policy committee and we'll revisit that one again, hopefully soon.
Next meeting is May 13th.
Yeah. Support staff bargaining is currently Dave Martin and Julie McKenzie. Is this a year where we're actually bargaining?
Yes.
Yes, so
For
it
both
is.
support staff and for teachers.
Okay.
When are the contracts out?
It'll start
End of next
fall.
year. So they're currently, the support staff is in, right, this year is the 2nd year of a 3-year contract. Next year will be the 3rd year. The same is true for the teachers. We should begin bargaining in no later than November, usually at the end of October, beginning of November. For support staff, that is Ludlow-Mount. You can put as many or as few board members on that as you like. The Teacher Bargaining Council is a shared committee with Green Mountain, 2 representatives from Ludlow-Mount, 2 representatives from Green Mountain should attend those.
If nobody's jumping at either of those two, is that
I'm happy to stay on the support.
on the sports?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the 2 of you that were on it would stay. So
Right.
for the filling the blank positions, if we're generally probably not needing to meet until October, this is one we might be able to table until we hopefully get some members.
That's your,
Still,
yeah.
is that fair?
You certainly can. You'll just want to be sure that the teacher one in particular is one that you want to have 2 people go to it
Right.
so that Ludlow-Mount is represented.
Transportation committee is currently David Martin. Anybody else?
We haven't met since I got on that.
Oh, I'll join that one then.
Need a name, I'll do it, but I'm not gonna be around for.
Okay, so we'll do the double Dave on the transportation committee. And we'll start making meetings mandatory every other day. Food service is currently Maria and myself. It's another one that meets a lot, once a
I
year.
want to stay on that, and I think we should meet more, because I'm interested.
Okay. Cheryl, we do need to meet in the spring, don't we? Once, yeah, okay, usually anyway, so we'll continue that unless there's somebody else is jumping on food service. Superintendent evaluation is all of us, and then, it looks like I am the Lone Ranger on the tuition committee. Anybody else want to join me for that?
What's the
Is
mission?
that the tuition that we charge if people come, or is this the high school tuition we pay?
It was, yeah, it was. And we talked about, right, we talked about residency and that kind of thing during the few meetings.
I'll go on there with you.
All right, Dave and I. There's enough room for 3 if anybody else wants to join us. Okay, Jamie, Dave, and I will continue that. Thank you. That's what I was just going for. How come that's not on? Board assignments. Did I skip it and we moved right to committee assignments? I'm sorry. Board assignments then would be, we don't have a list of those on here. So I know it's vice chair. Did we do the rest last time? Now I'm all confused.
I believe that we went through and I thought, well, we can check in minutes. I thought that you had,
I was on board signer
Right,
and board clerk.
okay,
Is it
the vice chair was
Vice chair.
tabled.
Right.
And I believe all the rest of them
we're filled.
were filled.
I would do vice chair until we have more people on the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody want to nominate Julie?
Oh, I'll nominate myself.
I nominate you.
All right, somebody want to second Julie's nomination?
Second.
Thank you. Anybody else want to nominate somebody for vice chair? All right, all those in favor of Julie being vice chair?
All right.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Kelly, do we have to do anything about soliciting new members? Or does,
So we've advertised, we
Oh.
put the ads up that we put it in a couple of publications, we've had 0 response. So we have so far had absolutely no one contact us with any interest. So I would suggest that people who know people in Ludlow who might be interested in doing this, might like to have conversations.
Lovely public people, come on, join fun. I do think I've also seen it on Facebook, a couple people I think have posted something, so I know there's a little bit of word out there, I just.
but you don't need any board action to do that.
No,
Okay.
Other than if you know people who might be interested, telling them to send a letter of interest, which can be done by email to either Kelly or to me.
And can you clarify it's a 1 year?
So what happens if somebody says, pick me, they would show up at the next board meeting. They should go to the select board of Ludlow, tell them that they are interested. Ludlow's select board has the opportunity to weigh in or not as it pleases about that. Generally, they choose to let us, the board makes the final decision. Generally, the select board does not have an opinion and wants us to make that. And then that person appears at the meeting. If there's more than one person, or even if it's just one person, we usually give them an opportunity to say a little bit about themselves and why they want to be on the board. And then the board members vote. If there's only one person, it's usually, the only requirement is that you be a resident of the town. And beyond that, you don't have to prove anything else. When more than one person applies, in this case, we would need more than 2 people to be applying, then the board votes on who they want to appoint. That appointment will fill one of the vacant terms I believe one of those terms would expire in 2026 and that one would expire in 2027. However, if you are appointed to the term, you have to stand for election at the end of 1 year.
And it would still be for the remainder of the term that's open, so
Yes.
that
So
flow is always there.
somebody coming in if in the 24 to 25 year, which is what this is, on that unexpired 3-year term in January of 25 would have to get their petition and put themselves on to be elected. And when they were elected, they would then serve those remaining 2 years. As Maria learned, you have to, and it can wind up being that you have to do that and then run for election again the next year because now the term has expired.
Any other questions about board assignments or committee assignments? Okay. Policies, we are all looking at second reads for G7, E4, E15, E13, E2, H4, which were all in our packet. It's a second read, so we can approve them all if people are willing. If people have questions or comments, we can put it off if we need to as well.
The policies, they all seem straightforward at the policy level. The harder work is at the administrative level. You have to figure out how to implement them. That's their job and not ours.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Yeah, with that, I make a motion, we approve G7, E4, E15, E13, E2, and H4.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion about policies? Yeah, sorry. All those in favor of approving G7, E4, E15, E13, E2, and H4? All those in favor?
Aye.
It's just like teaching sixth right now. Anybody opposed? None? All right. So we have it. Then we had in here to review the class size guidelines, which we've kind of already done.
Well, I'd like to share with you if that's all right. I'm sorry I didn't send this out to board members, but have one or two other things with the budget. So I'm going to display it for you and we'll share it with you. So this is, pull this up so that you can see it. This is what I presented on, let me make it a little bigger, on March 16th of 2022, when we had this discussion. And the recommendation was to approach a shift using attrition. As I said earlier today, somebody resigns or retires, we wouldn't recommend hiring a replacement until we met the desired staff to student ratio within our classes. For K through 3, recommended 13 to 18, 4 through 6, 15 to 20. According to Vermont's education quality standards, classes in grades K through 3, when taken together, shall average fewer than 20 students per teacher. In grades 4 through 12, classes shall average fewer than 25 students per teacher. Total class roll of a teacher shall not exceed 100 students. So that's the state level. Any class sizes must comply with state and federal safety requirements. These were the numbers we had at the time. that we were looking at. This was 2 years ago. And in Ludlow, we had 10 kids in kindergarten, 10 in first grade. And part of the impetus for making this was that we had 6 in grade 2 and 7 in grade 3, or we were going to in the coming year. So the decision to combine that, and rather than having a full-time teacher teach grade 6, to teach 6 kids, a full-time teacher teach 7 kids, we combined it into a class of, for the following year, that it was a combined 3-4 class of 13. The Mount Holly enrollment, you can see the enrollment per grade in this column. And in the structure of the classes at Mount Holly, were to have those combined. So there were 8 students in grade 1, 12 in grade 2, and they created a combined class of 20 that was then separated back out again. So the grades were combined, but they did 2 sections of them. Again, so that you had one class of 9, grades 1 and 2, one class of 11, and then that big class in grade 3 and 4, where you had 23 students in grade 3, 11 in grade 4, were combined together to create 2 groups of 17. This is what people were looking at, and in the discussion and that we had. In education, you can find a piece of research to support any position you care to take. And that's what it is. It's that because it is not a double-blind study on how to produce a drug to cure something. There are multiple variables. There is a great deal of research that talks about the benefit of small class sizes. Small for every place other than Vermont means a class of about 18. It does not mean a class of 7 or of 10. Those would be considered micro-sized classes in any of that research. So a small class is a class of 15, 16, something under 18. But none of that research, which is done looking at nationwide, where the notion in most states that you would have class sizes of 6 and 7 are and continue to pay full-time teachers to teach them, it is baffling. With it, but everybody gets used to what they get used to. So if you have always taught classes that are 13 or 14, a class of 17 feels enormous. If you have always taught a class of 7 or 8, a class of 12 feels enormous. If on the other hand, like most teachers in America, you've taught classes of 25 or 30, a small class is a class of 16 or 17. And there is plenty of evidence that for people who support the idea of class sizes in those upper teen range, that it is a benefit for students to have more kids that they are socializing with. In terms of the combined grades, which some people like and some people don't, there is no conclusive research to show that it has any academic effect. That it is pretty much a wash when you combine the grades. It doesn't help kids perform better academically, it doesn't hurt them academically. Now, there may well be classes of kids who are hurt by it or who are benefited by it, but research overall doesn't show that academically, but it does show a benefit in terms of social emotional socialization for kids who are in combined grade level classrooms and in classes that have more than 6 or 7 kids in them because they are having more opportunities. And there's plenty of anecdotal support for it. So you could talk to all of our teachers and you will find teachers who will tell you that the best possible thing is to have a class of 9. And you will find teachers who tell you that they hate teaching a class with fewer than 14 kids in it because there isn't the ability to group kids together. So, and again, I'm happy to go and find lots of research for you to look at. But I can give you research that says small classes of 10 are the best thing ever, and research that will tell you that classes of 10 are a detriment.
Can you add that to the website,
This,
that slide or whatever?
this slide, absolutely. I
A
did,
current one, though. I'm
Yeah,
not saying
so
that one. Yeah.
I also wanted to share with you, I have to get things out of the pop-up on my screen and not on yours. This is our expectation for class sizes next year. In Ludlow and Mount Holly. We have, and kindergarten's a guess. This is based on the information we have about kids who are enrolled in pre-K 4. Not everybody enrolls in it. There are probably more students out there. We certainly at Cavendish had the experience of expecting to have about 10 kids in kindergarten. They had 20 this year. So you never know. But we do not combine kindergarten with anything else. The reasons for that have been that it's a transition year. Even in Ludlow-Mount Holly, where kids are in pre-K, the difference between pre-K and kindergarten is very large. The idea of trying to combine grades with that makes my head hurt. So I just have said that's not something I would suggest. For grades 1 and 2, next year we are looking at a single class of 20 for Ludlow, and we are looking at one class of 12 for Mount Holly and one class of 12. That is based on our current kindergarten and grade 1 sizes. If that continues, if nobody leaves and nobody else comes in, we will have 20 students in Ludlow who are in grades 1 and 2 in a single class with a single teacher. We will have at Mount Holly 24 students in those 2 grades divided into 2 classes of 12. For grades 3 and 4 at Ludlow, we will have 20 kids in a single classroom. And at Mount Holly, we will have 10 in one class, 11 in another, if they were combined, it would be 21 students. In grade 5 and 6, there will be a combined class of 15 for Ludlow. And at Mount Holly, that's that big bubble class where there are 36 students in those 2 grades, which will be in 2 classes of 18.
Yeah, that bubble class is grade next year. So
Yeah. Yeah.
A big part of that is.
Yeah, it's 6th grade heavy.
Right. Lauren, can you clarify for me the second cell down or the first cell down under the LES? It says K to 6.
I'm sorry, I started to put it all in one column.
Okay, that's what I expected, and I just wanted to make sure I was.
That's a good, I'm sorry.
Getting
I
close to
started to
bedtime.
put it in one column and then realized that wasn't gonna work with Mount Thomas.
Well, for me, looking at that for Mount Holly, when we're talking about the 3-4, adding 3-4, I feel like having that teacher with 2 18 classes, like not really knowing, I feel like having that personnel, okay, we'll go somewhere is just important.
So Mount Holly does have.
Right.
Yes, so there's 2 different teachers for next year for Mount Holly for 5th and 6th. There's 2 teachers, so one has 18, the other one has 18.
Yeah.
What about special needs? Because are there a lot of special needs in those classes? Because that's hard for the teachers, right? And for the students, the other students.
Goes to the territory.
And 18 is still a reasonable size. I mean, I don't know
And
that.
again,
yeah.
as far as the educational research done nationwide, 18 is considered a small class.
Right, but if a lot of those are special needs, because we have a high amount of special
We
needs
do.
here. right?
However, a lot of them are special needs in other places as well. And that means that we want to make sure appropriate support is provided.
Right,
The idea of making sure that students who need a one-to-one have a one-to-one, we do that. If there are particular needs within the classroom that require more personnel, we certainly look at doing that. I do not subscribe to a philosophy that says because there are X number of students with an IEP, that means you must have this number of people in the room. We have students who have IEPs for all kinds of reasons. Some of them require additional personnel in order to be able to access their education. And some of them require things outside of the classroom. So there's nothing automatic about the idea that you have this number of kids and therefore there must be this number of adults in the room. And we did that in the past for a while. There was I've got more than 16 kids in my room. You need to give me a para in the classroom, even if there are no special education students, no kids needing special education in the classroom, just because it's so many kids. We don't do that. Nor should we.
Yeah, since pre-K is an indicator on what might be coming down the pike, why don't we put pre-K numbers up there? We have,
Well, this is essentially what the number 6 in kindergarten for next year is our current pre-K 4. The number 11 for Mount Holly for next year is the current number in pre-K 4.
and do pre-K still count as a 0.47 equalized pupil as it used to in the past?
I don't know what, I don't know what.
They're only a portion, they're not a full.
Because they don't always attend school 5 days a week.
Well, I know, there used to be a count of money purposes.
I'm sorry, I don't know the number.
So
We have pre-K 4 numbers, but not all kids attend them. It becomes a guess.
go ahead, Dick.
I think the policy is a good policy. What it doesn't answer is the question of what do you do if you have more than 18,
Exactly.
And less, and say up to about 24. But I'm also comfortable letting the administration look at the individual situation. Instead of saying if you have X numbers of kids, you have to divide it or you have to combine them. That they can look and say, all right, it's a first and second grade. Let's make it a little smaller. It's a fifth and sixth grade. Let's make it a little bigger. It's a challenging group of kids. Let's separate them. They're easy. Combine them. There are a lot of considerations that we as board members don't know about, and it's not our job to know about. But I think I trust the administration to make those decisions in that gray area. And as long, and if we're curious why they decided something, we can ask them to explain it to us. But I don't think we should get into micromanaging whether or not to combine a specific section.
Can I just clarify one thing just for semantics? This is not a policy, it's a guideline. It's a jumping off point to have a discussion when
I, as the administrator, am operating under the assumption that with these numbers, if a teacher, for example, if a teacher in Mount Holly announced in June that they were going to leave, I would not automatically hire a new one. I would come and talk to this group. And I was going to say, well, I appreciate that we all want to stay in our own lanes. But the guideline here is that it's not automatic. That if all of our classes here said, if all of these numbers on this said 13, I wouldn't come and talk to you. We would just hire another teacher. Because they're lower than that, we're going to ask you whether you think under these circumstances, and we're going to tell you what we think. When we're in those areas of our class sizes are above that 18-20 cutoff point or below the 13 cutoff. But my main question for you is whether you want us to continue to operate under something that this board had been unanimous about, which was that this was a good idea for both benefit to students and fiscally responsible to be operating under the idea that you did not want to continue to have class sizes of 6, 7, 8, 10 happening. And it's starting to sound to me as though that may not be the opinion of the majority of this board anymore. So that you may want to consider.
Maybe it's some discussion somewhere down the road.
So for tonight, we can, we put the budget to rest with sort of this conversation already, but looking forward to October-ish, when we start the next budget, which is not too far away, we should talk about this one more time before then, and so that we can have the thought in our head and then make decisions accordingly as we get closer to that.
And Teacher contracts have gone out. People have until the middle of the week after vacation to turn them back in. There are always within the SU a couple of people who decide to go elsewhere. Not always within every school. So we may not have anybody from either Ludlow-Mount College decide to move along. But if they do, we'll be back having this conversation again. Even though the budget will have passed
Right.
and all of that money will be in place, I will be back asking you what you want to do.
And that could happen as early as May. with
It could.
Contracts, right, okay. So no action on that tonight. All right, which brings us to new business, a new hire for Ludlow Elementary School.
To teach that grade 1-2 class. So we had, as you know, midway through this year, we had a much liked teacher for a variety of reasons had to leave. We've had a long-term sub in place, and Deb advertised for and has done interviews for that position. And we have a recommendation. Everybody has received the hiring materials for Laura Mealy, who was previously employed as a preschool teacher. And we're happy to have her back. And I'm going to turn it over to Deb to talk a little bit more specifically about why she wants to hire.
So Laura applied for the 1-2 position. As you know, she was a pre-K teacher here. I didn't know her. And when I was screening the applicants, invited 4 people to come in for interviews. 3 accepted. 1 backed out last minute. So we interviewed 2 different candidates, Laura and another candidate. Laura by far had the most experience and the best classroom management. We invited both candidates in to teach a lesson with the current first and second graders. We all, the committee went in and observed her teaching those kids, checked references. We've had conversations since that time and really talked about the importance of academics and using programs that we've adopted as for curriculum in the district. She is excited to come back and be part of our school community again, and we're excited to have her back with us.
So we would need a motion to hire Laura Mealy as a new teacher here at LES.
Make a motion, but I have a question.
Okay.
In the discussion.
In a discussion. Somebody want to second Dave's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Dave. Dave, what's your question?
Is the salary budgeted?
Yes. So we budgeted for all of these positions. We had the discussion about a possibility of moving somebody when we had this opening from the from Mount Holly into an open position at Ludlow. Decided not to do that, so I'm going to have that. But yes, it's in the budget.
Is there any discussion about Dave's motion to hire Laura as the new teacher at LES? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
You know, back away.
Okay, recuse it. Okay. Sorry, did I do the?
All in favor?
We all in favor. Did I say anybody opposed?
Yeah.
And nobody answered. Okay, thank you.
Silence was
So
taken.
congratulations to Laura. And I assume Deb, you'll let her know.
Yes, I
and-
will.
She's
not
online, so she knows.
Hi, Laura. All right. Policies, first read.
Hi, and thank you.
So we are looking at E1 fiscal management, general financial accountability, and G11 acceptable, responsible use of electronic resource and internet. Those would be for first review. So Any questions or comments on those, and then we could bring them back next time for adoption? No questions? All right.
You probably won't see them next time. Well, you'll see those next time. You probably won't see first reads because the policy committee isn't meeting until May.
Oh, good. Okay. All right, committee reports, CRSU board report. We've met about budget.
Yeah,
Really, that's about it. Nothing else exciting, right?
it was a special meeting just about the budget.
Right, and then we met in March, earlier in March, but I think we mostly talked about budget at that point too, so,
All budget, all the
Yeah.
time.
yeah,
And they'll meet on Thursday.
right,
Oh, right.
and hopefully meet on Thursday. Policy
Oh,
committee,
yeah, that's right.
We're not meeting until May.
not meeting until May, perfect. Facilities committee, we are gonna get a meeting together shortly. Shortly, all right. Policies approved at this meeting were G7, E4, E15, E13, E2, and H4. Public comment. Come on, Otis, let's go.
I just have a quick question, and it doesn't pertain to the budget per se. I was wondering if there was a spike in special needs since the beginning of COVID.
Not particularly. I mean, there have been increases. What there has been a spike in is behavior issues and mental health needs and the need for mental health support. But I do not believe we've had a particularly unusually high number of new special education approvals. And it's gone up, but it's been going up every year for a while.
So, the behavior issues, do you think that tied into the closure of the school for that year or for the 2 years? I mean, what leads to the behavior spike?
I'm responding in general. We don't do that during public comment. If you want me to,
Yeah,
I can
you can,
answer.
I mean, I don't know that we have a perfect answer for you. As
certainly don't.
Somebody who's in a classroom all day.
The general statements around that have been the spending 2 years of keeping within school hours, a distance from other kids, spending a year and a half of not being able to see anything. That for students at different developmental phases, that results in some changes in people and in children's ability to learn how to socialize, to learn how to read cues. For the most part, people will report, teachers report kids catching up, moving along pretty well, but it is certainly something that has been noticeable within classrooms of increased struggles to understand how to wait your turn, how to socialize appropriately with your peers. And again, not at the sky is falling levels, but it is, I have heard from especially lower grade teachers, pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, and second, in all of the buildings, statements about how students are less able to do some of those things at the beginning of the year than they had been in previous years, but also statements of how quickly they seem to be able to catch up to meet some of those expectations.
So I have one more follow-up question. So do you think that you bear some responsibility for your policy that you took during COVID?
I think we did what was absolutely the right thing to do.
There were
For
some
the safety of every one
other
of our
districts in the state of Vermont that didn't follow the same one that you.
I will tell you again, I think we did absolutely the right thing for the safety of our students. We followed the recommendations of the state.
So their
and that's
mental
what we
health
did.
was fine. Okay.
That is that, you asked me what I think, I'm telling you what I think.
Just making sure.
I don't want to wade into that.
Please, Jim.
Along that same line, yesterday you were quoted in the Vermont Journal, I've got the article about IEPs in our supervisory union. Out of the 900 students that we have, is that right? Almost 249, over 25% are on IEPs.
We have 249 students on IEPs.
So that's 10%, according to this article, 10% higher than the national average.
It is, yes.
So I don't think it was COVID, but
It wasn't COVID.
why do we have so many on IEPs in our demographic? Is that
Not,
something
not
that's ever been
a,
discussed?
not a response I can give you that is easy response. The response is because the educators and the teams within this SU, looking at the needs of these children, decided that it was in their best interest to provide those services for them.
So the IEPs are, who decides to put a student on an IEP? It's the individual teachers and administration.
It is a team of caregivers that includes a special educator, it includes an administrator, it includes the teachers, it includes clinicians, depending on the particular issues. It includes a case management team that has a carefully considered approach to what the evidence is that shows the need, that they look at that and together with consultation with parents, make decisions about what they think is going to provide the least restrictive environment and a free, appropriate public education. And those decisions are made by that case management team.
And I just, within a thick book of regulations. So all of that is decided based on lots of federal and state regulation.
And I think I've heard this before, but is it Ludlow or Ludlow-Mount Holly or both schools or just Ludlow that has like this, is it autism, the autistic?
There's a
For
program
the TRSU.
within that the TRSU runs 2 programs for students with particular special needs, one for students with social emotional needs, one for students with autism.
And
Those are
does,
housed.
okay, so could that contribute to?
Well, those are students who are within there's not an enormous number of students within them. Those programs were created so that our students who have those needs don't have to be outplaced and attend special programs in other districts or other states sometimes.
But those are things that are like diagnosed by
Yes,
medical professionals. Right.
for autism.
Yeah, right.
And there's a wide variety of reasons. I know people would like a simple answer. There's no simple answer.
Just for the minutes, do we?
Jay,
Thank you.
Sure.
I got one more question.
All right. Go ahead.
So I know you stated this earlier, Lauren, but I didn't hear. So we have 200 kids in Ludlow-Mount.
249 students in the TRSU, not in Ludlow-Mount. In the
How many?
TRSU.
I mean,
I don't have that number.
you don't have a number, how many kids in Ludlow-Mount?
Total students?
Total number of special education.
No, just for student count, population.
200.
For 200, right? 200.
Roughly 200 students.
112 for Mount Mount Holly and 88 for Ludlow.
Yes.
So what is the weighted number for those for Mount Holly? I think you had stated earlier, but I didn't hear.
600.
That also includes our tuition students.
That includes the
600
712.
No, 640 something.
But that includes
That
high school
includes
age or
712.
middle school and high school age kids.
Okay.
Because it's based on the residents.
Right.
But we don't have it broke down for
We do.
our district.
We had 3.
Special ed doesn't count in the waiting anyway.
It doesn't count in the weights, but we had within that, the one chart has the total number of students from last year within Ludlow-Mount Holly was 328 equalized pupil. This year, under the converted formula, we are given credit for 642. But those are not actual student numbers. The
They're not
equalized pupil number is all based on weighted.
I know what the weight shall be. Thanks.
Dave.
Just want to add that part of the reason that Ludlow and Mount Holly got the increase in the weighted figures was that the household income for Ludlow is about 40% less than the statewide average household income. No? That's not, the household income isn't a factor in that?
No, it's a number, it's.
Right.
Yeah. So students, it's the number of students who are on free and reduced lunch because their families have income below a certain level.
Based on their families.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so I mean, it's a different, I mean, right. So it's not because the 40% figure, but because we have so many people who are struggling.
You have a higher weight for students who are on free and reduced lunch and a higher weight for students who live in a rural area. And we have it's roughly 40%, I think, on free and reduced lunch. Is that where we are? A little higher than that. So somewhere between 40 and 50%.
We do have need for executive session, so we would need to make a motion.
Are we done with public comments?
Sorry, yes, I assume, sorry. Jumping the gun. Anybody else?
We have a hand up online
Oh,
from
sorry.
Elizabeth Carl.
Hello, everyone. Since I sat through this whole meeting, it's my first one. I just wanted to say thank you all. I know the work that goes into budgets in the back end and the day to day. So just sharing my appreciation. This has been a big learning experience, which I think many in our community don't often delve into, but have lots of opinions on. And I just wanted to participate and show my support for our schools. And I appreciate everything you've shared tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your thank you.
All right. Any other hands that I can't see? No, thank you. All right, so we do need to have executive session for discussion of contracts for non-bargaining unit employees. Do I need somebody to make the motion? Is that the cheat sheet for the motion?
That's some language.
Okay, who wants to make the motion?
Oh, okay, am I reading
Yeah,
this?
you have, it's a two motion deal, right? So you have to read exactly how it's listed right here.
I motion to that premature general public knowledge of discussions regarding contracts would place the board at a substantial disadvantage because the board risks disclosing negotiation strategies for the contract terms if discussed in open session.
So we need that motion first. So you're making that, so that we need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All right, then we need this, wait, we need to vote it in. All those in favor of the motion, the first motion?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Perfect. Then we need the second motion.
Now I motion to enter executive session to discuss contracts for the principals and other non-bargaining unit employees under the provisions of Title I VSCA 313A1A, inviting Ms. Fearman and Ms. Hammond.
Second for that motion.
Not that we don't love you guys.
Second. Second, thank you. All those in favor of executive session, inviting Lauren and Cheryl? Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, everybody. Yes, yes.